Hello, and many greetings from rainy Manchester to sunny Skopje. I am StefanBouzarovski. I am a professor of geography at the University of Manchester. I'm grateful to the organisers of this conference for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I do realise that we had to do a recording, unfortunately, because I couldn't join you today. I'm particularly grateful to the Blue Heart of Europe campaign and to EcoSense for their efforts on this. Now, I'm going to speak today about a study which I helped EcoSense undertake a few months ago together with Dr. Stephen Glynn from the University of Manchester. And Stephen is a modeler, whereas I'm someone who's more interested in energy policy and environment issues. I worked on energy, environment, and also poverty in the Western Balkans for the last 10 to 15 years, particularly in Macedonia. So this is within my area of expertise. The study basically had three aims. It was focused on the current state of energy affairs in the Macedonian energy sector, trying to see what recent developments have been and where they are going. Also, the second objective of the study was to explore the policy frameworks, and particularly existing studies that have looked at where the sector is and how the sector is developing. Particularly, we explored a study that was done for ELIM, for the hydropower plants of Macedonia, by a Spanish company, Mercados, which is now publicly available. And thirdly, we developed some scenarios. This was mainly the work done by Stephen in cooperation with EcoSense, just to explore where the sector could be developing in the future. Now, on that first point, which is where Macedonia lies at the moment, we found a number of trends. One of them was that generally the country is essentially its energy consumption overall has been growing, particularly in the household sector. And however, households are increasingly reliant on electricity and moving away from things like district heating and perhaps more sophisticated forms of energy provision. So also fuel wood is becoming quite important. At the same time, the country's overall energy intensity has been increasing. That's mainly due to developments on the industrial side of things, but nevertheless, at the moment, Macedonia has an energy intensity that's 45% above the OECD average. Also, the other development is that, and this is also refers to our second point, which is about strategies and policies, there has been insufficient attention on things like energy efficiency for the residential sector. So basically, programs to improve the residential efficiency of the housing stock are almost absent. There's very little done on this topic. And I guess the other point that we made was that there's been very little development of renewables generally. So I guess there's some development on hydropower, but the use of things like solar and wind is fairly limited. Just one comparison, in 2012, Macedonia installed solar power capacity that's more than 20 times less effectively. So it's more than a 20th of what a country like Slovenia put in, of similar size and possibly more in installation. So obviously, not even to compare Macedonia with countries like Bulgaria, Greece nearby, which have surpassed this capacity extremely by compared to Macedonia in recent years. So I guess one thing we want to say here is that there's a lot of potential in the country. And again, this is based on existing studies to develop these resources. And bringing me to my second point, we looked at Mercados, and Mercados is in that study is in many ways developed out of it uses a lot of the assumptions of the national energy strategies of the country. Now, on that front, one thing we would say is that, again, there's a fairly pessimistic view of how much the country can do in terms of solar, renewables, but also in terms of reducing its energy efficiency. And we looked at some other studies, particularly by the World Bank, that emphasize basically how much more can be done on that front. The Mercator study focuses very much on gas as a transitional fuel, or perhaps even a destination fuel for the country's energy supply. Also looks at coal as a secondary alternative, and it employs the quite substantial predictions of the national strategy done by the Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts for hydropower development. Now, even with those very significant numbers for hydropower development, which also include, I guess, some of these hydropower plants which I discussed today at the conference, which are environmentally problematic because they are in protected areas. Even with that, Macedonia would still need to invest very substantially, according to Mercados, in things like coal and gas in order to meet the balances that are projected there. So in other words, these power plants, which I guess I discussed, these power plants in the Mavrovo National Park, are really a very, very small drop in the bucket compared to those overall energy needs that are being projected there. Now, what we did in our scenarios, we looked at that scenario as a baseline, but then we took out from the hydropower projection those power plants, and indeed they were just a small blip at the top of that projection. And instead of them, we focused on maybe seeing what would happen if the country were to develop its solar power potential, but also its wind, although wind is a bit more limited. But with solar, there's a lot more that can be done with the price of technology coming down now. So we developed a number of scenarios looking at those technologies as let's say being the main providers of the country's energy supply. And also we looked at basically reducing the country's overall energy demand. And there are a few scenarios in the study. I won't go into them, but what I want to emphasize in all of them is basically that with a significant reduction in demand, with more investment in solar and other basically renewable sources of energy, and using of gas as a transitional fuel, we eliminate the need for coal investment in the country and also for investment in these problematic hydropower plants. So a different energy future is possible for Macedonia. It's only a question of political will in many ways, and of finding the money or actually financing these investments. So in a way, maybe it might seem cheaper now to invest in these types of energy sources such as coal or even these problematic hydropower plants. But again, and we looked at carbon emissions as well, in terms of future carbon emissions for coal, but also we didn't look at biodiversity loss for these hydropower plants, which are of course difficult to monetize. But if you take those dimensions into account, obviously there's lots of possibilities for moving away from those types of energy, which are so problematic from an environmental and also social point of view, onto something that can provide a sustainable energy future for the country. So I guess the study is available online. People can see it, and I'm available for questions over email. You can find me. My email address and website will show up on the screen in a moment, and you can obviously, if you want to ask me further questions, you can do so in that way. I do apologize that I cannot be today in person with you. Thanks very much.